Currently valued at $64 billion and only increasing, the wedding industry has driven some financially irresponsible habits and super unrealistic expectations that are driving couples to ask themselves over and over again, do I have the wedding of my dreams or the wedding that I can afford? If you're new here, my name is Alexa, I'm 25, I live in Missouri, and I am trying to be my best financially healthy self and giving way too much of my opinions online, but aren't we all? Most of my friends are married or they're getting married very soon, so I feel like the topics of weddings have just been at the forefront of my mind, and also just all of the traditions and how that impacts everyone financially. Today I'm going to be talking specifically about Bachelorette evolution, how it started, where it's at now, what the costs are, and how trying to keep up with these societal expectations might be driving you into a hole that you really can't pull yourself out of. And if you are a man watching this, I think there's still something for you to learn and kind of know what your future partners are getting themselves into whenever all of the wedding festivities start, because this is going to affect your joint wallet later on. How did bachelorette trips begin and what have they transformed into now? In the 1900s, women didn't even have bachelorette trips. A lot of this is because women lacked autonomy and independence that we see women having today. The 60s are marked by activism, with two of the biggest movements being with civil rights and women's rights, but there's honestly so much more that happened in the 60s that started the shift we're seeing today. Before this decade of courage, I think it was really just typical for brides to have a bridal shower, which was only a few hours of a singular day. But with the increasing autonomy and independence from the 60s to the 80s, that's when these trips really started to blow up and we started seeing more bachelorette trips. However, in the 80s and up until really the mid 2010s, these bachelorette trips were local, they were in your hometown, and they usually lasted a singular day. However, in 2025, it is very common to treat these bachelorette trips like mini vacations. They last multiple days, they're usually out of state, sometimes they're out of country now. And in 2018, the average cost of a bachelorette was $537. That is $690 in today's money when you account for inflation. If you're not accounting for inflation, then you're really not seeing the full picture, because it's kind of like whenever your grandparents used to say, well, I could get a burger and gas for $5. Okay, $5 on gas and a burger your time is $20 today, which is still significantly cheaper than just a tank of gas and is almost the cost of a burger. So things have gotten more expensive, but it's not to the same degree that people say, because they're not accounting for inflation. If you want to run the numbers yourself, I will put the formula on screen, but I used an inflation calculator to figure out what the cost was in today's dollars. And I will also put the link to that calculator in the description. But what this is using to account for the difference in dollars is the CPI factor, and that's really what's converting things here in real time. The CPI is Consumer Price Index, and it's the average change for a specific market over time. However, this online calculator uses the annual CPIs, which I pulled from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. They have a report that they put out every single year for the CPIs of individual markets and then also annual. So now that we know that the cost of a bachelorette trip in 2018 was $690 in today's dollars, it is still really shocking to see what the average price of a bachelorette trip is today, which is $1,300. That's a $610 difference in 7 years. Why are we doing more in 2025? I think inflation does play a role, but I don't think it's the majority of the jump that we're seeing. Inflation has increased around 20% since 2018, but this is an 88% jump. So inflation is not the majority of the picture that we're seeing today. When I put my thinking cap on, I don't want to say it's those damn phones, but I kind of think that it is. Your reality and expectations are created by the experiences you're having in your life and the exposure of things that you have in your life. You see all these dreamy weddings with food being served to you on a gold platter and dancing horses at midnight, lobster for dinner. You start to think that the cute little backyard wedding is just not enough and not what you deserve and not special enough. Women are told over and over again how this is your day and how you can't get it back and you're going to regret not making it the wedding of your dreams. I definitely agree that this is a day to be celebrated. However, this day doesn't exist in isolation. This day doesn't exist apart from the rest of your life. And the decisions that you make for this one day could have decade-long implications for a joint partnership that might start going downhill because you chose to start off on a terribly built financial foundation by spending out of your means and going into debt for one singular day out of the entire marriage. So bachelorette trips are really no different. You see all these brides going to Scottsdale, you see them going to New York or Nashville or Tulum, Mexico. You start to think that the 1 hour drive out to your cute little mine town or cute little German town is just not enough and not what you deserve. Single day trips have turned into multiple day trips. And then we're making most of the city that we're in since we got all the way out here. And you do way more excursions and activities than you originally planned to. I read that 52% of people go into debt in order to attend a bachelorette trip, which is crazy. It blows my mind. But then when I started to think about it a little bit more, it does make a little bit of sense. I personally would never do that. I have a hot take. I'm not going on the trip if I don't have the money, but that's just because I prioritize my financial health. Like, I'm not going to go into debt for a trip that doesn't really mean I'm a good friend to you or not. It just means I was able to go on the trip physically and able to pay for the trip financially, which apparently people are going without being able to pay for it financially. I hear this a lot online and from other financial influencers that most Americans can't afford a $1,000 emergency. And I was trying to figure out if that's actually legit, because I doubt that 60% of Americans are living without $1,000 to their name, aside from what they're spending just out of their paycheck. And what I found was that this was a survey, and what the people were asked was, if you had an emergency, would you use $1,000 from your savings account to pay for the emergency? And most people said no, which doesn't mean they can't afford it. It just might mean that they don't want to get rid of the $1,000 in their emergency fund, because they live in this scarcity mindset. And we have all probably lived in this scarcity mindset. And it's like, oh, well, if I use it for this emergency, then if a real emergency comes up, I won't have the money for it, which then you're going into debt to pay for an emergency when you had the money because you're scared that a bigger emergency will come up. It's a whole thing. There's a lot of psychology, but I don't think it's true that most Americans don't have $1,000 to cover an emergency. I think a lot of Americans are not wanting to use their emergency fund for their small emergencies. And if we're not spending money on emergencies, I doubt people are draining their savings to go on all these little mini vacations. So that's why I save every single month for travel. Even if I have nowhere planned to go, I try to get my savings up to $6,000 just in case I have a random Europe trip. Has it happened? Absolutely not, because I honestly, like, that would stress me out to have a last minute Europe trip, but I like the idea of being able to do that. And so what ends up happening is I go on all these smaller trips and I visit home a lot, and so I just pull from that. Or when people are visiting and I want to pay for them because they're visiting, I will pull from my travel fund. So it all works out, but I'm glad that I have the money in my sinking fund to be able to do that. And I do save for all my travel in a high yield savings account, and I use Sofi because it has such a high APY. Right now it's at 3.8%, and I get a little extra cash every single month from putting all my money in there. I keep track of how much money I get from my high yield savings account in my monthly budget planner, and I keep track of how much I have in my savings account, obviously on my bank app, but I also keep track of it in my budget template. If you're going to do a multiple day long trip as the bride for your bachelorette, please consider somewhere everyone can drive to. Please consider building your budget around the person that has the least amount of money in your friend group. Or you could also help pay for the difference that they're not able to if you really want them there and you are just super set on going to Tulum. Well, if it's going to cost everyone $1,500, but one person can only afford to go on a $700 trip, maybe you cough up the extra $800. Since you're balling out here with your wedding and your bachelorette, ball out for your friend. One way you could do this is text everyone that you're wanting to be on your bachelorette trip and say, what's your budget? And then plan your trip around the person that gives you the smallest number. At the end of the day, do you care more about who's on the trip or how the trip looked in your camera roll? Because I think it's ridiculous that we're expecting everyone to spend all this money on an event that's not even theirs. And really the point is for us to all be together, but we're asking them to spend like maybe half of their paycheck, depending on what tax bracket you're in. Like, that is not a great financial decision. Okay, so planning an affordable bachelorette trip. I just came home from a bachelorette actually this past weekend. Bachelorette trip was a Thursday through a Sunday event. I'm a person that likes to take charge. I don't really like to sit in the back seat. I don't think anyone's surprised with that. And also because I'm into finances and selfishly I didn't want to spend $1,200 on a bachelorette trip, I volunteered to plan the bachelorette trip. I picked the location, I found the Airbnbs, I made the grocery list, and then I also was in charge of the decorations, and I planned excursions and set up reservations. I am a bridesmaid, but even if I wasn't a bridesmaid, I think if nobody had stepped up, I still would have done it, to be completely honest. But I made most of the decorations at home actually, and I made a healthy but affordable meal plan. I made sure that the activities went well with the theme and that we could do most of those activities for free or very low cost at the very expensive Airbnb that we were all staying at. And I wanted to spend more on the Airbnb because I wanted us all to feel a little bit more luxurious staying at home, just so that it felt like a worthy trip, because that's why a lot of people spend so much money. They want it to feel worth it for their guests and worth it for them and their time. You just have to budget a little bit. I personally spent $200 on decorations, random food accessories like little popcorn boxes, things like that. I made goodie bags for the winning team. We did a camp theme, so it was like Teen Tech Texas versus Team Oklahoma, and we earned points actually throughout the weekend, and the team that won is who got the goodie bags. I was on the team that won, and it was Texas. I am from Texas, so I'm glad that I was Team Texas, and I'm glad Texas won. One of my other friends did also help with the decorations. She spent probably about $100, but 60 of that was to get 2 giant heads of the bride and the groom. I just thought it would be funny if we got them. Personally, I wouldn't have spent $60 on them. If they had been more than $30, I would have been out. But she's a little bit more dedicated than me to the decorations, so she spent money on that. So we did a cruise as well. So the Airbnb, groceries, and the cruise was $383. Honestly, not bad for Thursday through Sunday. I spent $142 on gas. We ate out once, and then I bought something from an antique store. I bought a porcelain version of my dog, essentially. It was so cute. It was $8. I had to get it. So in total, I spent $525 going on this bachelorette trip, which is lower than the 2018 average, which makes sense because I planned it and I was intentional about it. It was a pretty low cost compared to the $1,300 average. Also, what I spent on decorations was based on what I had in my savings accounts. I had about $1,100 saved in my gifts, sinking fund, and my high yield savings account. Because I had $1,100 saved, I felt okay using up to $300 on making decorations or buying decorations. If I had $100 in my gift budget, I probably would have only spent $25 on balloons, and I would have handmade a bunch of signs with construction paper, butcher paper, or whatever. It would have been a very different looking bachelorette if I had had less money. But I think you have to do that if you have less money. Like, put in more effort and time into hand making things if you don't have a lot of money to spend on making things convenient. It's important to know what you have, what you're willing to spend, so that you're not overdoing it for yourself, but then you're also giving enough to other people, because I do think it's important to give, but give within your means. Like, don't go into debt to give. That doesn't really make sense. Okay, so we're gonna have a reality check and pep talk. Trying to chase after a picture perfect bachelorette weekend, draining your savings, or worse, going into debt just to get that and have great pictures, I think is a terrible financial decision. Please don't do that. You're only a bride once, but you're a manager of money forever. So just remember that. Your decisions today, especially if you're putting on credit card debt for an entire year and a half or a year when you're planning this wedding, it's going to take a while to pay it off, depending on how much you make. But if you made enough to cover the cost, you wouldn't be having it on debt in the first place, right? You don't have to spend $500 on decorations to make them look nice. You can just put in a lot of time and effort to learn how to do things, and then they come out really nice, actually. Like, you might have to do it 2 times for it to come out nicely. I had to try my sign twice, but you can get there. Swag bags are another really big thing right now in bachelorettes. You don't have to make a custom t-shirt, custom cup, custom bag design. What you can do is get these cute little baskets from the Target $1 section and fill it with ingredients to make a meal. And like, that would be cute. Or make it a s'mores box, or make it a hot chocolate box. And then it doesn't cost you that much. It has a little theme. It's still cute. It's still a gift. Thank you for coming. But it's not a $200 gift for each guest. There are ways to reduce costs, and I feel like a lot of it is doing it yourself. But I think the younger generation, myself included, we are not used to being inconvenienced. And I think we want everything super fast. We get bored. We don't want to struggle. We don't want to work for things, really. It needs to be easy. TikTok makes that easy. Like, you're scrolling for instant gratification. Oh, that's funny. That's funny. Oh, that's too serious. I don't want to think about that right now. You get home, you don't want to do anything. Why would you want to sit down and make all these decorations? But I think if you can sit down and learn how to do something for a little bit, then you know how to do it for the next event. And then you don't have to spend so much money. Like, if you're ordering it off Etsy, it's because somebody can make it themselves. You can learn how to do that too. I tell myself that all the time. If Katie can figure out how to sew a name onto a bag, so can I. She might do it a lot better than me right now. If I don't have the time, but I do have the money and I want her to do it, great, thank you, Katie. But if I don't have the money and I do have the time, why would I not try to do it myself first? Your high school friends that you never see do not care about how much you spent on your wedding. They might talk about it for a day, like, wow, that was amazing, but then they're gonna forget about it and they'll move on. At the end of the day, like, somebody always has something negative to say, whether it's the DJ, or it's the decorations at your wedding, or it was the colors of your wedding, or the food was terrible, you didn't talk to them enough. There's always going to be something that people don't like. So just do what's within your means, because you trying to please everyone and trying to have a perfect wedding, you'll never achieve that, because it'll never be perfect. You know, in Taylor Swift's words, haters gonna hate. So at least let the haters hate on something that was within your means. And I'm not even saying that I'm above all of that, because I catch myself saying negative things about things that don't matter. I was like, why did I care that the chicken was dry? Like, shut up. This isn't about me. Hi, I'm the problem. It's me. But my point is, we should all be caring less about what other people are doing. Save some money by learning how to do it yourself instead of ordering the thing times 12 on Etsy. Don't dig yourself into a hole that's going to be extremely hard to pull yourself out of. And please stop spending over $1,000 on a trip when you and all your girls are complaining over a $100 oil change. You don't have it like that, bestie. Like, you don't have it like that. In all seriousness, to bring it all back, the wedding industry is extremely saturated and it's a lucrative industry. Prices are more expensive because the demand is there and it is known that people will pay the price that is being thrown out there. And keep in mind that it benefits corporations and businesses for the culture around weddings to be bigger and perfect and intimate and amazing and paying attention to all the little details, because it fills their pockets more. We've increased Bachelorette costs by 88% in 6 years, and the average is over $1,000 per person to attend these trips. Look into more local places that everyone can drive to, mix in free activities into your itinerary of going out, and get off the internet. Except, stay here a minute longer so that you can get back to what you actually care about. What do you like? What do you want? What is enough for you? Not like, what do you think is enough for everyone else, but what is enough for you? But please give this video a like if you liked it. Subscribe if you want to follow me on my path to wealth and financial health. Leave a comment down below with your thoughts on the wedding industry, what you think about bachelorettes. If you're scared, if you're not, if you're excited, have you been through one? Do you have any regrets? I would love to know anything and everything. And then please drop any other topics that you'd like me to talk about, because I love reading articles and learning new things. But have a lovely day, and I'll see you in the next one.